Thank you very much, Kayla, and I'm delighted to join you this afternoon as you begin your deliberations on how should the UK's democracy work. And what a really interesting question at a really interesting time. And I say that from the perspective of somebody who advises organisations, be they companies, charities, community groups, advise them on how to understand and inform public policy and political parties, as well as being somebody who has, over the last number of years, been involved with many deliberative processes and conversations about deliberative democracy. I was lucky enough to facilitate at a number of citizens' assemblies and forums. So I suppose I see democracy from many different angles. And I have a particular interest in what's happening in the innovations that are taking place across the UK, be it in communities, be it at local government level, but also be it in Parliament, and what that means for the future of democracy. So, some of the topics that I was challenged with thinking about have been covered really well already. So I'm only going to maybe point out or pose a couple of questions that you might want to think about when you're thinking about, let's start with that those in power are able to deliver their manifesto pledges. And we know that parties devote a lot of time and energy in developing manifesto pledges. And I know that organisations and people spend a lot of time thinking and talking to political parties about what they feel should be in manifestos and what should emerge within programme for governments, legislative agendas of governments. But what I would say to you, I think the question that you need to ask yourselves is, what is the role of a manifesto? Is it a pledge? Is it a promise written in stone, as we saw with Ed Miliband a number of years ago? Or is it an aspirational document that provides you with an insight to the values, the perspectives, and the aspirations of political parties? Now, in Westminster, with its tradition of a single party government, which is really a product of the first past the post system, there seems to be a prevailing view that actually manifestos are pledges and that people should be held to account for when they don't deliver. However, in other democracies where you have more proportional electoral systems, actually manifestos are seen maybe as a starter for 10 in negotiations as parties agree to form coalition governments. And there's an element of compromise and conversation actually about what ultimately reflects the settled view of the majority of people rather than the view of the small number of people who voted for a certain political party. So if we go on then to this issue of a serious consideration, and Hannah really helpfully outlined some of the challenges that people may have or concerns they may have about what constitutes serious consideration. Is it that it takes too much time? Is it too expensive? However, the opposite often happens, that if we don't give decisions serious consideration, projects, programs, everything from the Millennium Dome through to HS2 and other large projects end up taking more time and costing more money than initially envisaged. And also there's the issue of unintended consequences of bad policy, or not necessarily even bad policy, but where we just haven't thought through the long-term implications of political decisions. And so what's really interesting at the moment is the movement, and you may wish to look at the conversation around the Future Generations Bill that is currently in front of Parliament, that says actually politicians and government should have a mind to the impact of policy decisions on future generations. So it's not just the impact of decisions made now, but it's what impact can we foresee them happening on people in the future. So that's really important, that issue of serious consideration. So moving on to the idea, the proposition that people should have the same influence on decision making, whatever their background. Now, for those of you who may not see themselves or people like you sitting around the cabinet table, you will have an interest in this topic because you may wish to see people like yourself around the cabinet table. And there's also some people, and you may wish to think about this, who, if they see themselves and others like them around the cabinet table, they may not have wished to give up that power or their place around the table. But when you are having this conversation, you need to think of the barriers, whether they are social, whether they're educational, institutional, political, or otherwise, that stops people from having the same or some appropriate amount of influence on decisions that impact them. And so let's think about what are the processes, innovations, forums that we could be looking at as a democracy to improve people's access to or impact on decision making, and what role in the future do politicians have in including people in decision making? So that could be everything from mandating more citizens' assemblies. It could be about enabling people to be involved in participatory budgeting. It also could be about including people or training people in the art of responding to consultations. And also, it's important and key to all of this will be the education we receive in school about the role of citizens, the role of people in democracy. And so that's something that you may wish to consider in your deliberations about that particular topic. And finally, that people take part actively. And this is a really interesting idea, and it's something that we see increasingly reflected in the aspirations, not just of minority groups, but of organisations, community groups, all up and down the country, right across the United Kingdom, as the ideas of, as the mantra, the idea of nothing. Now, of course, I've entirely forgotten the mantra, which was the main one, nothing about me without me. And so what's that about? It started with patient empowerment and co-design of services. And it now has evolved to more broader conversations about service delivery across government. So it is important that people actively take part in democracy and the development of public policy, because we know that people report that they are happier, they experience well-being when they have more control of their lives, and they're more likely to support policies and decisions when they make a contribution to those decisions. And so they're just a few of the ideas that I would like you to think about, or the questions I would like you to think about when you come to your deliberations later on. Thank you very much.